allowed to preach. So he stood up and said, "The minister has asked me to say a homily, and when I find out what that is, I'll let you know." Right, you might have to stay there, Bruce, and just let everybody in again.
Yeah, I'm gonna disable the waiting room. That's fine. So they're just coming. Yeah, they're all joining.
Great. Yeah, I want to just share really three points that I felt that we can learn about from my father. That Ecclesiastes reading about living life simply really was my father in a nutshell. He didn't care what people thought. He did what he wanted to do. He didn't chase after stuff, you know. I got a message from one of my friends, Dean. I think he's probably there, and I want to read it to you. Alright, we need to mute all the guys. Guys, please mute yourselves. We mute everybody here. Don't want to touch. Anyway, Dean, your dad's single-minded approach to life and his love for the simple things and his rejection of frivolous superficiality of life is worth serious consideration. I have indeed learned from your dad. The image of your dad doing his arm-raising exercises in the middle of Cowgie Road at 6 a.m. is beautifully branded in my memory. I was on my way to work and he was exercising. Nothing in my life has changed, and I think I need to think about that. Your family are in my thoughts, your mate Dean. You know, one of the things that amazed me about my dad was that he was free from the claws of addictions that get into so many people in this world. You know, whether it was alcohol, pornography, anything of life, that greed, envy, lust, none of those things touched him. They just brushed him off. And when I meditated on it, I think part of it is the simple life that he led. You know, those things didn't affect him. I never heard him complain about anybody or anything. And that's a real thing to live up to. No bitterness. You know, he wants to be an Air Force pilot like me, and his mom said no. Then he wants to be a game ranger. And when he applied for the job, he couldn't get in because there was no places available. And then when I came along, which was quite soon, I think he realized that it would be better for us as a family if he was working at ACI and not being a game ranger in the bush. And he sacrificed that for us. Never once complained about it or mentioned it ever. So, yeah, that's a real high bar for us to look up to. The second point that I have is that we should live a life of adventure. Now, there's no Bible verse anywhere that says live a life of adventure. But when you read the Bible and you look at life, you see adventure is part of it. If you really want, there's a couple of Bible verses. Psalm 118 verse 15 about shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous of the Lord. You can see I like that one. Or Job 39, 19 to 25 about the war horse and his name and flicking his mane and wanting to get into the battle. My dad was like that. He was always full of adventure, and I've got 100 stories to tell. When he was at school, they stole some poor blighter's sheet and plugged the school bells. Nobody knew what time it was or what was happening. He got caned many times. He had a pet bush baby. I think they made pineapple wine, and that bottles exploded, and then when he went to university, he was a big rugby player, as you've heard, and their nemesis was Durban. And when Durban was coming up, they were bringing up their mascot. My dad and his mates decided they were going to hijack the mascot. So they got a whole bunch of army suits and they blocked the road, the Durban Road exit from the N3. And as the cars came, they stopped them and let them through. But the very first car that came was a police car. So they said, carry on, and the police car drove off and then stopped and reversed backwards. My dad just said he bolted into the bush. And yeah, so I could go on. There's two things that I'm very, very grateful for my dad. And the first one is that he took me on my rite of passage. We live in a very gender-confused age, and I think we need more of this. When I was 12 and Roland was 11, he took us hunting in the bush. And sure, it was an amazing time. And I don't even think then I realized the importance of it. I came back and mentioned it to my mates, and they were all jealous of me. Wow, you went hunting with your dad. I shot my first guinea fowl, and we cooked over the fire in the bush, and wow, that's gold, hey? Stuff you just don't get. I wanted to read a part of BP's last message. My dad wasn't a scout, but this also it epitomizes him. This is BP's last message. I believe that God put us in this jolly world to be happy and enjoy life. Happiness doesn't come from being rich, nor from being successful in your career, nor from self-indulgence. One step towards happiness is to make yourself healthy and strong while you are a boy, so that you can be useful and can enjoy life when you are a man. Nature study will show you how full of beautiful and wonderful things God has made this world for you to enjoy. Be content with what you have got, and make the best of it. Look on the bright side of things instead of the gloomy one. That's just my dad. If you read that, you can hear that. And the second thing I wanted to, hold on, let me just take a step back here. I think this is a good time, and it's part of this my adventure point, to think about what heaven is like. I was reading something recently, and they were saying that the current world, heaven is too much puffy cloud and harp, mentality. And I don't know if you've ever spent some time thinking about what heaven actually is like. There's a book out which I recommend called Heaven is for Real, about this little kid. And one of the things he says, he apparently went to heaven, is that there's no old people in heaven. There's nobody with glasses in heaven. And so one of the reasons why I put up that picture of my dad is because when you're going to meet him next, that's what he's going to look like. He's not going to be like the old dude you feel on that. And I think another part of heaven is I don't know, this is me, this is not anything biblical, but I believe that life is about making fireside stories. One day we're in heaven, we will be chatting about the things we did on earth and the adventures and the wonderful stories we can tell. And so I encourage us all to make the most of our lives and enjoy adventures. The last point I have is that my dad taught us right from wrong. And I was thinking about how he did this. And for me, it comes down to, he used to read to us bedtime stories, as was mentioned, King Arthur and Robin Hood. Now he read us a particular book, this is the book, and I lost it for years and years and years. I couldn't find it. I knew what the front page cover looked like. I remembered that picture. And I remembered it was King Arthur, Robin Hood the first half and King Arthur the second half. Finally we get technology, and I googled it and I found it. And I don't know what it was, but I just started reading this book, and on the second page, this is an oath that Robin Hood swore. I swear to honor God and the king, to help the weak and fight the strong, to take from the rich and give to the poor. I don't know how biblical that is, but so God help me with his power. And we all know that my dad wasn't one for going to church. But the right and wrong in my heart was very strong. I remember in the early teenager years, there was a friend of mine who wanted me to join a gang. And I just knew that it was wrong. No, sorry, it doesn't matter how good a mate you are. I'm not interested because that's wrong. We used to have debates with my dad because he was really strong in the whole evolutionary thing. And we were worried about him a bit, I must admit. And, it's not so much about evolution, but random selection versus intelligent design. But that's another story. But he preferred the bush to church, and we all know that God's first way of revealing Himself to us is through the bush, through nature, through the beauty of nature. And I know that impacted my dad. But later on in his life, more recently, he got involved with some beekeeping guys here in Ballita. I have no idea who they were. And if you know who they are, you must let me know. But they were a big Christian bunch, and they had quite an impact on my dad. Because the one day he said to me, you can't look at the bee and what he does and not believe in God. And he said to me further than that, he said, this little bee came and sat with him one day, and he felt the presence of God there with him. And if you know my dad, for him to say that at all, it's like a wow thing. So I believe he's made peace with God. And as I finish, I go back to the Ecclesiastes verse. And although that we live day to day, meal to meal, there is something more than just living and eating and working. There is eternity in our hearts. And we must all remember that and live our lives with that in mind. A challenge to each of us. Alright, our final song is The Lord is My Shepherd. We're going to try and put that up and hopefully not destroy our Zoom. Please stand as we sing The Lord is My Shepherd. Bruce, can you come help us? Holly would like to say another couple of words. Please sit down briefly. When he's finished, we're going to sing.
I think Dave used to say of me that I will be forever known as the late Mr. Clarkson, even before the obituary columns were written. So too. Today, in trying to prepare something suitable to share with you and to pay tribute to Dave, I thought we'd approach by belts and braces, as one tends to do, try and prepare something, prepare a written speech, have it on digital media. And I'm afraid we had neither the belts, as you can see, I left that at home, nor the braces. So, my prepared text, as Dave would like, and let me share it with you. We start with a clean sheet, and that's the sum of my speech. But having said that, and I did want to ask Wendy to speak, and we spoke briefly this morning, and she said that she would like to have a few words relayed on her behalf. And so I will do that with a great sense of privilege, Wendy. Like you, I too could experience that emotional meltdown. But for good reason if we do. So, from Wendy, it's been a partnership of 54 years. And I said, and what would you like to share? She said, well, in 54 seconds, what can one say? But between Dave and herself, the proudest achievements in life, for bringing into this world two very fine sons, Bill and Roland. They in turn have two very fine wives, daughters-in-law, in Natasha and Alida, who are here today. They in turn, as this tree spreads its roots, the family tree, have produced 5 very, very special girls, daughters. So I think I'm also going to pay tribute to the next generation, as we do on behalf of Wendy. And I was just thinking how appropriate Keats, who is a celebrated English romantic poet, spoke of the ode to a nightingale. How very appropriate. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. And in the course of the last week, we haven't seen the nightingale. Well, not that I'm aware of seeing the nightingale. Maybe after a few beers we'd see the nightingale. But we're blessed to be surrounded by nature. And it's quite ironic how we've seen new life in our state, and we had not one clutch but 2 clutches of guinea fowl chicks that came past our house in the last day or so. And this reminded me of when I was very young, and I also had that rite of passage into life, Bill, Roland. And we tried to rear guinea fowl chicks. It's very difficult, mind you. So I think there was something special and symbolic, and Dave has now seen fit to bring new life into this world through the new next generation of chicks in the form of guinea fowl. But going back to Keats, let me just summarize. It's no small coincidence that Keats is an acronym, if you like, for K-E-A-T-S. Now you'll say, well, what is the significance of that? With the exception of T, which I'll get to, we have in the 5 granddaughters, K represents Katja, the E for Emma, the A for Abby, the T we'll come back to, and the S for the oldest, Sarah, and for Sasha. And I think these qualities embedded in the first letters of Keats represent qualities in Dave himself. So let's take each one in turn. The K, I think we've had testimony to his sense of knowledge and his ever insatiable quest for further knowledge in life, and always by analytical review. Dave was a great one to research things, but also know-how. He was practical, he could do things. Heaven forbid, I couldn't change a light bulb, but Dave was trying to design the next generation of light bulbs. He also was kind. Katja, that's a quality you've inherited. Kind beyond words. There was never too much that he could do for friends, for family. And so we will always remember him for those 3 qualities: knowledgeable, know-how, kindness. The E is for, I think, enthusiasm. Emma, I hope you're listening. An enthusiasm for life, an enjoyment, a zest for that, what he did. Always with a spring in his stride. Dave just loved that. But he was enterprising above all. Life was an exciting journey for him, whatever he set his mind to. And so too the A. A as in Abby. Dave, as you know, was artistic. He was, I think, athletic, I'm sure we could say without doubt. Adventurous beyond measure. And these are qualities I think that Abby will, and has indeed to date in her young life, inherited. The T, we'll come back to the T. And finally, S in Keats. S, I think, represents those qualities in Sarah and in Sasha. Stability, soundness, sociable. Dave was very sociable. And there are many others that I think we could share. But as to the T, that's the one that's not in the family tree. Not officially, at least. Dave sometimes could be tactless. When he heckled the Premier at the prize giving once, I had to say, who's this? And I stepped away because they said, is he known to you? This was after he had a few beers. And sometimes in a lighter moment, I think the reason Dave enjoyed running so much was because he could start socializing at about 8 o'clock in the morning. But tact and tactlessness, I don't think were too far removed in his life. He was very thorough, another T, in what he used to do and prepare and in fashioning his opinion. He was quite talkative, it's a quality I think I've inherited. He really tagged that onto being sociable. And trouble, I think, as you heard from Bill, never far from trouble. He used to taunt people. He was a trickster of note. It was always, with a twinkle in his eye and a mischievous sense that he would embark on pranks, and took a great sense of enjoyment in doing so, and I'm sure he is looking down on us. So that T that is missing from the family tree, save for being embedded in the tree itself, is one that makes up Keats, and that a thing of joy is a beauty forever. Can I just conclude it by sharing, I had some time to think in the hospital that I was in last week, and I penned a small tribute which I have shared, and I know Dave shunned the social media, so apologies in advance first to those who may have seen it on the social media, on Facebook, but secondly to those who did not see this tribute and may wish to hear it again. So just bear with me for a couple of minutes. This is a celebration of a life well lived by a brother much lived, and a husband much loved. And so Wendy, you and I are enjoined in this final time to say goodbye. No time was there to say goodbyes, so sudden was your demise. We have to ask why, with tears in our eyes, yet no time to cry. There'll be tears of sorrow, for Dave, for you there's no tomorrow. Let these, however, be tears also of joy, of pride, and of pleasure. As we mourn, so too, a rich life we'll treasure. No more the haunting cry of the skyward fish eagle, nor the taunting bark of Jackson or the regal beagle. No more for Dave, the wayward wildebeest doing the highland fling. But be sure, in nature's heaven, Dave himself will be bound to join all to sing. Dave, for us, you were more than just a brother, a simple brew. To us, you were the world in the years of our youth, to be true. Infinitely more than just half, the other half, which raised many a smile and often a laugh. Dave, you were my foundation in life, teacher, mentor, counselor, my rock and rod. So much so that I worship the ground on which you and the occasional puffadder trod. Always ready to offer friendly advice and a helping hand. To me, you were the best brother in the land. Imbued with an inquiring mind, an inventive streak, and an artistic flair. For you, it was always right to question the ways of the world, but this was invariably done with due diligence, logic, and care. Analytical and thrifty by nature, you were also as wily as a fox. It was natural, too, for you to think out of, and then try to design the box. Occasionally you were, as a leader, and others have rightly said, stubborn as a mule. Nay, make that 2 mules. Not one to conform readily to society's norms or to obey its silly rules. Not for Dave the likes of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, WhatsApp or other social media networks, nor dare one to suggest to him the use of a mobile phone or device, unless of course it's to measure time and distance, in which case he would respond in the thrice. Dave, your mortal race is run, your time on the road is done. Along the way you achieved marathons, medals and memories aplenty. Friends too, many with whom you shared the odd local brew, a case or more of 4 in 20. And that's not blackbirds baked in a pie. Comrades too, you conquered not once but 15 times. Yes, the ultimate human race. Now it's time to revert to your own chosen pace. For in the long run, it's always done for fun. And together with Bill, Roland, Wendy, your champion sons and your dear wife, we count ourselves blessed to have been part of your journey through life, to which, as in your running career, you always put yourself to the test, to do and to give nothing short of your best. With love, and may your dear soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.